everybody, welcome back to Red Dirt Resale Storage Auction Story Time. The story that I'm about to tell is a story of a legendary rapper. Of course he's legendary because he died when he was, still making music. So just like everyone that dies before they get old and everyone is expecting them to die, they become a legend. If it's somebody that's at the top of their game and putting out hits and really super famous, then this just tends to happen. Elvis, Kurt Cobain, you name it. Michael Jackson. I mean, Michael Jackson was already really famous, and it was almost as if everybody knew something weird was going to happen with him. Prince, after Prince died, he was kind of getting a little bit older, but all his, he became even more famous, even more legendary. All of his memorabilia and music became even more sought after. But the person that we are going to be talking about is Tupac. Legendary, famous rapper. A lot of people say best rapper of all time. Like I said, some of that might have to do with the fact that he died, so he became even more legendary. But anyways, this story is going to be talking about lost lyrics, lost raps, lost songs that were potentially found in a storage unit. This story goes back years and years ago. I don't know exactly, I'm thinking about 5-6 years ago. It was still when we were doing live storage units. A lot of the stories I have goes back to when all the auctions were live. When the auctions were live, a lot more crazy stuff happened. You had way more interaction with other people at the auctions. So you just had way more, way more story material that happened back then versus now when they're online, because it's just not the same as it was as far as having all the interesting, crazy stuff happen and hearing all the different stories and getting tangled up in the different stories in one way or another. But this story, I didn't actually get this unit. This was a couple, they were from Alabama. It was an older couple. They were like in their 60s at this time. They had been buying units for years and years and years. They've been buying units since, I think, sometime in the 80s. So they were long-time buyers. They were buying back when really nobody was buying them. They were getting, who knows what they got over the years. Really nice couple and everything. They'd come out and they would spend some money though. They knew what they were doing, and they came all the way from Alabama. So when they saw something they wanted, they weren't afraid to bid. They would spend money. They didn't want to go back empty-handed. If they were going to drive all the way here, they were going to buy something. They always rent on the U-Haul routes with Dell. And the U-Haul routes, U-Haul routes had a lot of locations and a lot of units normally. Sometimes you might have 100+ units in one day on certain routes with U-Haul. But they were always at U-Haul. That's where this happened. Location kind of not downtown, like immediate downtown area of Atlanta, but still inside the city limits. Still most people would consider it downtown. Piedmont Road U-Haul, so it was definitely an area where you could find anything and everything. A lot of famous people in Atlanta, a lot of rappers in Atlanta, so this is definitely, not too far-fetched. But they bought a unit. They bought it down here at this facility on Piedmont Road. And they, bought it. They loaded it up. They took it back to Alabama. They, sorted through and started selling stuff. And then they get a call from U-Haul. And U-Haul's telling them that, they weren't supposed to sell the unit. I think they were supposed to sell the unit, but what was happening was the person that owned the unit, they were somehow involved in the music industry, and once they found out their unit had sold, they got upset, even though from the sounds of it, they didn't pay on the unit. It was legally supposed to be sold, but they went and hired a lawyer, and they were trying to determine, whether the unit was supposed to be sold, and then they were trying to find out what was in the unit and if they could get certain things back. So, they were dealing with U-Haul and everything, and then they contacted, an investigator contacted this couple out in Alabama. They actually went out to their place in Alabama because that's where all this stuff was, and they went out there several times, because they told me all this and everything. They told several people all this. They went out there several times and questioned them over and over and over again. They had all the surveillance video from U-Haul, like like the elevator area is one place where they have a lot of surveillance cameras. So they had them on the, camera, loading the stuff on and off the elevator, and they would freeze the video. They came to their house and they showed them the video, and they would ask them about a certain box. And, they cooperated and they answered all the questions the best they could, but most of the time they were like, a lot of the boxes, they were just like, I don't remember what was in that one. I mean, you're just, sometimes one sticks out in your head, but a lot of times it's like, I don't know, I think there was clothes maybe, or sometimes like, I have no idea at this point what was in that one. And, they were just asked them a million questions to the point where they were cooperating. They didn't want to break any law, get in any trouble, and then they didn't do nothing wrong. They just won a unit at an auction, but they were cooperating. But it was starting to get on the nerves and get old, because they just kept on and on having to meet with these people and answer a bunch of questions, most of which they really didn't even know. Asking specific stuff that they didn't remember. I don't know exactly how long it was after they had gotten the unit, but I think it carried on, because I remember it seemed like months later they would say that they were interviewed again. But what they were looking for were apparently the guy that owned this unit that was involved in the music industry says that he had notebooks in there that were Tupac's notebooks, where he had written lyrics, to rap songs that were never released. So there was, I don't know if he was just saying a couple pages or, pages upon pages, but whatever the case was, according to him, there was potentially, actually handwritten lyrics of Tupac raps that no one ever saw. And if that was the case, I mean, there is no telling how much money those could have potentially been worth. I mean, can you imagine those going to auction, or, just basically being put up for sale where people knew they had them, and different producers or rappers, other rappers with a lot of money, or just people in the music industry, basically bidding, saying, hey, I'll offer you this, or just putting it straight up in an auction. There's no telling what they would have went for. But I mean, truly, don't even really know if they existed. Whether this guy was just trying to say that to get his stuff back, so he was trying to make it into a bigger deal because he wanted to try to recover some of his stuff. Who knows? And I remember asking him, I was like, man, do you realize that that's actually what was in there? What that could have been worth? And they're like, yeah, but I'm like, it doesn't matter to us at this point, because all that stuff's gone. Because any of the paperwork and everything, that's what they kept telling people, that they had already thrown it away. Because that's normally, when you're going through a unit, you're just kind of getting the trash out of the way. So all the paperwork was all gone. And they were like, even if they would have saw that, they would have never have known. I mean, I don't even know if it would have been if it was a notebook that said Tupac's rap lyrics, if they would have known what that meant, or if they would have even thought, if you would have thought, are these real rap lyrics? I mean, who knows? But at that point, it didn't really matter to them. I mean, they weren't going to stress over it, because it was gone, thrown away, long gone. There was nothing they could do about it. But just the fact that potentially, a legendary musician's lyrics that were never released to the public may have been in this unit, they got auctioned off and just got thrown away because they just had no idea. But that just goes to show you literally never ever know what you might find in a storage unit. And sometimes it's weird stuff. It's not like literally a treasure chest full of gold bars. I mean, it could be just an old notebook. I'm just imagining this old notebook, ragged around the edges, maybe some stains on it, because they just kind of carried around with them everywhere, and then jotting down lyrics, looking like something, 99.9% of people would have, not thought twice about throwing this away. Unless there were other signs in there, like pictures of Tupac and stuff like that. But, they said they didn't, they didn't see anything that made them believe that the lyrics were in there, but they didn't really know for sure. But just an interesting story. Especially here in Atlanta, there's a lot of crazy stuff that gets found in units. A lot of celebrity stuff gets auctioned off here in Atlanta. A lot of professional athletes, a lot of rappers, a lot of movie people. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes on. If you watch Marvel movies, pretty much every Marvel movie, when it gets to the end, it's filmed somewhere in Georgia. Most of them are around the Atlanta area. Where I live, we're about, we're like an hour outside of Atlanta, but they're filming stuff around here all the time. We're in the city of Dallas, and the city of Dallas, they've got like a regular filming of Stargirl, the series. It's pretty much all filmed right there. And then there's other stuff that comes into Dallas and around, all the time. There's these little yellow signs they put up with codes on them to tell like people how to get there. So that stuff's going on around Atlanta all the time. All the musicians, there are a lot of musicians that live here, a lot of musicians that come here, that visit here. And then you have, a lot of professional athletes. Obviously, we got, major sports teams, so they're coming and going. So it's just, who knows what you're going to find. And then, people out in California buying units or wherever. I mean, you could be out in the middle of nowhere and something crazy pop up. But you never know what you're going to find. And who knows if those lyrics were actually in there. But potentially, they just went to Alabama and just went to the dump, never to be seen again. If you like this video, you want to hear more stories like this, see more videos, about the resale business, us out there picking up storage units, digging through them and seeing what we find, hit the like button, leave a comment. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Y'all have a good one.